Salut à tous. Donc, j'aimerais commencer ma présentation pour remercier à toutes les organisations qui ont aidé, toutes les organisations et personnes qui ont aidé au développement de mon projet de recherche. So now I'm going to switch to English. As you can see from my slides, my presentation will be how assessing the deep geothermal potential of remote northern regions can be framed under a value of information problem. So let's get it started. So what is a value of information? So as scientists, we always face uncertainty, right? And we often act under the assumption that more information equals better decisions, which is often correct, since the more information we have, the more well-informed decisions we can make. However, information comes at a cost, right? And since we cannot learn and know everything, and sometimes the information we can actually get, it's still imperfect, how can we know if that particular source of information we would like to have is actually important for our research? So this leads us to the concept of value of information. Value of information is a method from the field of decision analysis that quantifies how useful a particular information source is when making decisions under ubiquitous uncertainty. Value of information is particularly appealing in the presence of several uncertain and costly information sources. So this will help us to decide which of those sources would actually help to obtain better outcomes if uncertainty could be eliminated. So I like to think about this concept as lottery and prizes. For example, imagine a decision maker facing a decision of drilling a geothermal well under a certain degree of uncertainty. There are two possible outcomes, right? One is drilling into a productive reservoir, which means winning the lottery prize, or the worst case scenario is that the well ends up being unproductive and participating in this lottery led to lose money. So this is where value of information comes to play. So the goal of applying this concept is to increase the certainty of winning a good prize in the lottery by defining which parameter will actually help me to have a better knowledge of my geothermal potential of the area. So now let's look at this in the framework of evaluating the potential of the deep geothermal potential of Kujawak. So when we started the Kujawak project, the only information we had was outcrops, where we collected rock samples and we measure fractures, one fracture at a time, right, Fiona? And we also had, we only had one well of 80 meters deep, where we did temperature measurements. And then most of our data came from literature. So as you can imagine, we were facing a lot of uncertainty in the beginning of the project. But with the information we have, so what we decided to do is that let's quantify the uncertainty we have. Let's quantify which parameter will be important to, to look at the next phases of the project, if they will happen. And thank God they happen, but we'll go back to that later. So as you can see, so basically we quantify all our uncertainty sources. So we have uncertainty in the thermal properties of the geological materials, in the geothermal gradients, in the fracture network, in the stress field magnitude, in the stress field orientation, in the rock mechanics part, and also on the subsurface permeability. So from all of those, the one that we found out that had the biggest impact was the geothermal gradient. So our research with the few available data that we had at the time showed that the geothermal gradient in Kujawak could range from 9 to 41 degrees Celsius per kilometer. As you can imagine, this has a huge impact on assessing the deep geothermal potential of a site. So So basically what happens is that if the geothermal gradient was 9 degrees Celsius per kilometer, there is no geothermal potential, okay? But if the geothermal gradient was like 20 degrees Celsius per kilometer, then there is potential for space heating applications at depths of 3 and more kilometers. But if the geothermal gradient was 41 degrees Celsius per kilometer, then we won the lottery. And we would be able to have not only potential for heating, but also for electricity generation at the depth of 4 kilometers deep. So we also see, like, of course, that the uncertainty in the geothermal gradient also has an impact on the cost of a system. So if our geothermal gradient was 20 degrees per kilometer and only heat can be produced, the levelized cost of energy of a geothermal system in Kujawak would be kind of comparable to what the community is paying right now with the oil furnaces. But again, if our geothermal gradient is 41 degrees Celsius per kilometer, again, lottery, big prize, we not only have potential for heating, but also electricity, and our levelized cost of energy is way lower than what the community is paying right now by using the diesel power plant. So what do we know? So on one hand, we have diesel that is costly. It's not energetically secure and brings a lot of environmental and can bring a lot of potential environmental issues, which places the communities at a vulnerable position. On the other hand, we have geothermal energy as a resource that can be affordable. In its local, so it gives the community more energy security. It's environmentally friendly. However, there is still a lot of uncertainties when it comes to assess the deep geothermal potential of a site, and not to mention that getting that information can be quite costly. So now I have a question for you, and I want to see like hands raised. Oh shit, hands raised. So if you were a decision maker facing what I just said, what would you do? Would you pursue the project and, you know, take a leap of faith and let's try to figure out, let's try to decrease the uncertainty that we find out about the geothermal gradient, for instance? Or would you just decide, let's forget about it, this is too risky, I don't want to face the risk? So what did you do? Okay. Pursue? Okay. Thank you. There is one person. All the other audience says, no, let's just abandon this. So for people that decided to pursue the project, so what's happening now? So in October 2021, a 240-meter deep well was drilled near the Forum building in Kujawak. And with that, we took some temperature measurements, and that helped us to decrease the uncertainty in the geothermal gradient. So instead of 9 to 41 degrees Celsius per kilometer, we now are in the range of 20 to 22 degrees Celsius per kilometer. So what does it say to us? It says that space heating applications might be a possibility to develop in Kujawak at a depth of 3 to 4 kilometers, and also that the geothermal potential has a probability greater than 80% to be capable to fulfill all the heating needs of the residential dwellings in Kujawak. We also see that the levelized cost of energy has a probability of 40 to 90% to be lower than what the community is paying right now with using the oil furnaces. So, and also we were able to decrease uncertainty in terms of the thermal properties of the geological materials of our core, and also the rock mechanics part. So what what this well helped us to figure out is that prior to the well, prior to have information, we had like 33% of having no geothermal potential, 33% of having potential for space heating applications, and 33% of having potential for electricity and heating. So with the information, with just the geothermal gradient, we see that, okay, there is a high probability of having potential for geothermal applications for direct use of the heat. So this meaning winning the lottery with a kind of good prize. So nevertheless, there is still important phases to complete the project. And the next steps will be, again, go a little bit deeper, try to figure out the subsurface permeability, the stress field, and also, again, some temperature measurements. And that's it. Thank you.